Thomas Newton's year-day principle. It is important to understand the terms used in Scripture for the fulfillment of prophecy. Are the days and years always literal, or are they often symbolic? The answer is to be found in examining the context. This is essential. A text without its context is only a pretext. In short-term prophecies, the years mentioned are sometimes literal years. For example, we read, "And within 65 years shall Ephraim be broken, that it be not a people." Isaiah 7:8. In this instance, the time measure was fulfilled in literal years, since the house of Israel went into captivity to Assyria within 65 years as prophesied. There is no disagreement between Roman Catholic and Protestant scholars when it comes to Daniel's 70 weeks. All agree that each day is to be interpreted as a year. The futurists are forced to accept the fact that the prophetical 70 weeks are interpreted a year for a day, but they struggle with other vital divine time measures. For example, in Daniel, that of the domination of the little horn, Daniel 7:24, that of the desolation of the sanctuary, Daniel 8:14, time, times and a half, Daniel 12:5 and 9, the period of 1290 days, Daniel 12:11, the period of 1335 days, Daniel 12:12. In the Apocalypse, the 10 days tribulation of the church at Smyrna, Revelation 2:10, the duration of the scorpion torment, Revelation 9:5, the career of the Euphratian horsemen, Revelation 9:15, the time of the downtreading of the holy city, Revelation 11:2, that of the prophesying of the two witnesses, Revelation 11:3, the time that they lay unburied, Revelation 11:9, the sojourn of the woman in the wilderness, Revelation 12:6 and 14, the period of the domination of the beast, Revelation 13:6. The futurists attempt to interpret these days as literal days. Of course, if we believe that the entire book of Revelation is restricted to Ribera's 7-year tribulation period, then we have no alternative but to defend the inconsistent day-day theory. However, Protestant theology has understood for centuries the day for a year principle. A brilliant example of this is seen in the writings of Bishop Thomas Newton. In Bishop Newton's exhaustive work, The Dissertations on the Prophecies, he looked at the 2300 days of Daniel 8:13 through 14. Verse 13, "Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice, and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot?" Verse 14, "And he said unto me, Unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed." Bishop Newton understood the Grecian implication necessary to commence the time measure. He wrote in 1754. He calculated 2300 years from his interpreted starting date of 334 BC, Alexander the Great's invading Asia Anno Mundi 3670, and said that 2300 years later we should see the Jews restored to Palestine and the temple site regained by them. Worked out, this would have to transpire by 1967. The futurists laughed and said it would never happen, but it did. The prophecy was fulfilled with the 6 Days War of 1967, when the Jews again took control of the temple site after exactly 2300 years of its being trodden underfoot. What an amazing prediction, precisely fulfilled. Doesn't this put to shame the futurist date setters of our time? I quote from Kessing's Contemporary Archives. In one of the most rapid and dramatic campaigns in modern history, Israel achieved within 80 hours a complete military victory over her Arab opponents before all hostilities ceased on the 10th of June. Israel had, by the end of the 6 Days War, overrun the entire Sinai Peninsula, gained control of the old city of Jerusalem, with the result that the whole of Jerusalem came under Jewish control for the first time in nearly 2,000 years. Actually, as we have already established, it was 2,300 years. What a victory for the Jews, and right on time. At the end of the 2,300 years of Daniel 8:14, the sanctuary site was won back. God has his divine time for everything, and he is never late. As Daniel 5:21 tells us, the Most High God rules in the kingdom of men. Why have we forsaken the more sure word of prophecy? 334 BC, 1967 AD, 2300 day years. Perfect! Biblical commentator Adam Clarke likewise addressed the 2300 days and came to the same conclusions. However, he made a mathematical error in his calculations and concluded the time measure in 1966 instead of the proper fulfillment date of 1967. We must remember that when one is calculating from BC to AD, 1 year is lost in the overlap. This was Clarke's mistake. Nevertheless, this man understood the year-day principle and openly proclaimed it as true prophetic interpretation. We read from his commentary, I think the prophetic day should be understood here, as in other parts of this prophet, and must signify so many years. If we date these years from the vision of the he-goat, Alexander's invading Asia, this was AM 3670, BC 334, and 2,300 years from that time will reach to AD 1966, or 141 years from the present AD 1825. Remarkably, these men pointed to our generation and proclaimed prophetic fulfillment. To them, prophecy was a sure word. Today's futurist teachers are far from sure. Their books are full of erroneous dates and scenarios. When their teachings are put to scholastic interrogation, they crumble into incoherent puzzle pieces. I think it is appropriate to add to our list of questions. It is impossible to travel along this path of historical disclosure and reject the blatantly obvious questions that are arising in our minds. I can't list them all, but I can present some very serious problems for futuristic theologians. 1. If the year-day theory is applicable to part of the book of Daniel, that is, the 70 weeks, then what about the rest of the time measures in his prophecies? By what authority do you pick and choose? 2. The Apostle John incorporates Daniel's time measures into the Revelation. Are they not subject to the same consistent interpretation? 3. Therefore, are the Revelation seals, trumpets, and vials yet to be fulfilled in Marbera's 7-year tribulation period? Or have they transpired throughout the church age? If so, where are we today? When were they fulfilled? Remember, to teach futuristic or preterist eschatological interpretations is to teach schools of thought birthed by the Roman Catholic Church. Lord, let this present darkness be removed from our eyes, that we may see how you have asserted the credibility of your word upon the written prophets and their prophecies, 1/3 of the Bible. Thus far, we have challenged the very foundations of a prophetic empire of superstition. All of the previous history and accompanying accusations were necessary so that we might understand what is at the stake, waiting to be burned up. I boast in nothing. Good men of God have spent their ministries trying to interpret these mysteries, unfortunately never obtaining the necessary keys of knowledge. They have established themselves as teachers, and now must face the possibility of becoming children in this debate within the body. It will not be easy, and I do not rejoice in the fear and heartache that inevitably accompanies theological reformations. Nevertheless, we must press on. The prophet Jeremiah understood this type of ministry. His commission was clear: to root out and to pull down and to destroy and to throw down, to build and to plant. Already I have obeyed, in moderation, the first of these commands. Now it is time to build and plant. Before we interpret the 70 weeks, let's heed the words of Henry Grattan Guinness. One of the gravest evils of futurism is the terrible way in which it tampers with this great fundamental prophecy, Daniel 9:27. Applying it to the future doings of some ideal Antichrist, its divine description of the past deeds of the historic Christ. He, Antichrist, coexists not with the recognized Jewish nation, but with the rejection and dispersion of the Jews, and with the recognized professing Christian church. His sphere is not Palestine, but Christendom. His throne is not Jerusalem, but Rome. His victims are not Jews, but Christians.